We're going to solve by completing the square. Completing the square can take a lot of different forms where you need this coefficient equal to 1 and all these different pieces of criteria. But here we have a pretty straightforward scenario because we do have this coefficient equal to 1. But we do have this plus 7 here. So I'm going to go ahead and move over that 7, x squared minus 4x. I'll leave a little bit of a gap here. 0 minus 7 is negative 7. Now I'm ready to complete the square. So completing the square is we're going to take our b term. So when we have a, b, and c, this is our b term. So I'm going to take my b term, I'm going to divide by 2, and then I'm going to square that. So my b term here is negative 4. I'm going to divide by 2, and then square. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 squared. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2. So we're going to have positive 4. So what I do with that term now is I want to add on the positive 4 here. That's why I had to move over that plus 7. So I had to subtract over the 7. So I wanted that gap there because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create the scenario where I'll have x plus or minus something squared equal to something else like that. That's what I'm trying to set up right now. So I'm going to add 4 over here because I'm trying to keep it balanced. And then now I have x minus 2 squared. If you want to think of it like factoring the x squared minus 4x plus 4, that's going to be x minus 2 times x minus 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. That's the whole goal there. Creating this scenario where we have just this single term, x minus 2 squared. And then that's going to be equal to negative 7 plus 4 is negative 3. And now we go through and solve. So this is where it gets a little bit difficult. In order to solve this, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. That's going to give me x minus 2 equal to plus and minus the square root of negative 3. Well, if I'm taking the square root of negative 3, I have to take out I, because we're taking the square root of a negative, and then 3 is going to stay inside. So x minus 2 equals plus minus I root 3. And from here, we're just going to add 2. So it's not like, it wasn't super crazy or anything like that. But if you're more new to completing the square, then that whole transition of going from maybe here to here could be a little bit difficult. And then again, from here to here, making sure that you pull out I because we're taking the square root of a negative. But we're going to have plus minus I root 3 plus 2. So you could write this as I root 3 plus 2. As one solution, and then negative I root 3 plus 2. Those would be your solutions. But I would probably just leave it like this. This would be perfectly fine. But that's how you would complete the square. So the whole goal here with completing the square is you want this coefficient on this term to be 1. You want that to be 1. And then you also want to just have it where you have the A and the B term, and then you can push over that C term to the other side, so then that way you can create this scenario where we're just going to have x plus or minus whatever single term and then squared. And a little bit of a cheat here. When you get from here, when you write down this line and you're going from here, so this line to here, and it's pretty easy here because it's just negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Like that doesn't take too much thought. But if it was something weird, like something crazy, like a fraction, you could look back at this process right here. This term right here, right before you square it, that is usually going to be your indicator of like, that's going to be this. So if you ended up with like something like 2/3, negative 2/3 squared right before you squared it, then you would just put x minus 2/3 and then in the parentheses part. Just a little bit of a cheat there. That most of the time will happen just like that from what I've seen at least, unless it's some really weird scenario, but it should happen out where that term is just going to be right here, so you don't have to really think about it too much. But completing the square could be difficult, could be easy in some scenarios, but it's definitely an important skill that you want to make sure you know how to do. And then even the solving, we're not out of the woods either, because the solving could get pretty difficult. So hopefully this helps with completing the square.